What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today it's the Game Week 8 preview. So we're going to go through your questions and topics that you've put to me on Twitter and on YouTube. There's a lot to go through. Fixture swings, players kind of coming into form, teams coming into forms, teams coming into good fixtures, etc, etc. So lots to talk about. As always, if you enjoy this video, please do give it a like and hit subscribe if you're new around here. One topic I won't be covering with great detail is the beard. I know there's been a lot of comments in the videos of the last few days, either pro beard or anti beard. Either way, it will come back, but for now I'm doing this for November. There is a link in the description below if you want to check that out and support me. I'm also walking 10 kilometers every single day, as well as going sober for November. So if you want to support me, link in the description below. Otherwise, no more beard talk. Let's get into the FPL stuff. So we'll start off with Diogo Jota, right? So he's on 3 and 3. People are starting to take notice of him. I've had some questions in the Patreon Slack, should we go for Jota, etc. And then he goes and scores a hat-trick, right? He rises in price from 6.3 to 6.4 million. And now a lot of people are looking at him. A lot of people are thinking of going for him. It feels like another Phil Foden, right? Phil Foden was around the 6.5 million mark. He's gone up a little bit now. And people started to get him in because he plays for a team that's going to score plenty of goals and he's cheap, even though they know he's going to get rotated. So first of all, he is going to get rotated, right? There is no way, in my opinion, that he is now going to start week in, week out. Like people saying, well, that's it, Firmino's just done now. They're going to play 4-2-3-1. But I just don't see a point where they just continue that 4-2-3-1 from here on out. That 4-3-3 formation they've played for years now, that has won the Champions League, that's won them the league, right? And I know managers and teams have to adapt, but I'm just not sure right now is the time where Klopp's going to say, right, Jota has to be in, it's 4-2-3-1 every game. So the other option is he comes in for one of Mane or Salah. Well, how often is that going to happen? Probably not very often. And then it's Firmino. And Firmino has been a mainstay in that team for a long time, right? And you can say that he doesn't score enough goals. But again, that has been the same for a long time. And they've won plenty, the Champions League, the Premier League. And they've done okay with Firmino in the side. So there's just no way he suddenly starts missing out. Next game is Man City away. So first of all, I wouldn't want to bring in a Liverpool player for that game. Let alone one who I'm not even convinced will start, right? Because if you're playing Man City, you want more of a defensive side in some situations, and Firmino is that player, right? So I personally, I just think he's still a rotation risk. Does that mean that you shouldn't buy him? No. Foden at times is going to be good value, and people are going to hold on to him, and they'll ride out the 1-point cameos, because let's be honest, right? He might have come off the bench and scored a few times. That's not going to keep happening, right? He's going to come off the bench sometimes and blank, believe it or not. So you're going to have to ride out those 1-pointers with maybe those double-digit hauls. And as I always say, that's fine if you're the type of manager that can cope with it. But what you see all the time is people will say he's great value for his price. It doesn't matter if he gets benched because when he comes on, he can score. You know what happens? They get benched, they come on, they get 1 point. That FPL, or the majority of FPL managers, cannot cope with that. Now I need to get rid of him. Then you're just wasting transfers because you're bringing him in and transfer him out. So for my opinion, I could be wrong. Please let me know below if you disagree. He's not going to be a guaranteed start. And also, you look at the fixtures. In the next 4 games, they play City, Leicester and Wolves. So it's not even that ideal either. And he's probably not going to play all of them. There are some good fixtures in the next, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. They play West Brom, Fulham, Brighton and Palace. So there are some good fixtures there. And I'm not saying he's just 100% always going to start from the bench in the league. Absolutely not. But he is a rotation risk. But if he gets good minutes in that Liverpool front 3, or even in that Liverpool front 4 if they play 4-2-3-1, then for 6.4 million he's going to be great value. But you have to be prepared to ride out those 1-point cameos, which will come. If you're buying him thinking he's going to score in every game, let me be the bearer of bad news. That is not going to happen. Right, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about the Liverpool defence again, but I'm going to talk about it again because 1, I've got rid of them, right, and 2, I want to play devil's advocate a little bit because I think for some people the West Ham game was kind of the final straw. And the funny thing is, most people shouldn't have been expecting too much from this Man City game anyway. So imagine if the roles had been reversed, right? If they played Man City first and they blanked, you'd be like, yeah, okay, fair enough, it's Man City. Then they've got West Ham. If they blanked in that game, I don't think the rush to sell would be as big as it is now because Man City makes it a lot easier to push the button because you're not expecting many returns from that one anyway. What I want to remind people of, right, and I'm not sitting here, I think I tweeted about this and someone replied to me that you're playing mind games because you want people to keep them. I couldn't care less whether you keep your Liverpool defenders or you sell them. I've sold them. If anything, you selling them makes it less risky that I've sold them because there's less people that own them, so I can't be punished as much when they do well. And they will do well at some point, right? I have no doubts about that. But I'm going to play devil's advocate a bit because pre-season, right, and maybe I said this as well, they had the season keeper tag. I'm just going to keep them in all season. Now, I don't like using that tag very often because it's very rare you'll get a player in game week 1 and you will genuinely keep them until game week 38. It is so rare that happens. Now, I would have said a few times they're going to tick over to 180 to 200 points. And I still think that is possible, right? So they should still be season keepers for some people. But let me just remind you of that first, right? How many of you said they're season keepers, doesn't matter what happens, they're staying in my side? Now, with FPL, you shouldn't be stubborn. You should change your mind. You should take things into account, like Van Dijk getting injured, right? And that should play on your mind when you think about keeping them. But here's a few things I want to talk about, right? So I got rid, that's one thing I have to cover. I got rid because I wanted to fund Rashford, and the easiest way to do it was Trent to Chilwell. The other way was Dominic Calvert-Lewin down, and I just didn't want to do that because I had so much money wrapped up. So it felt like an okay time to try and get rid of Liverpool. I'll tell you now, it wasn't fun watching West Ham with no Liverpool defence. Once they conceded, it was a bit easier. But even then, West Ham just didn't trouble Liverpool at all, really. It was a bad header from Gomez. Apart from that, they didn't really trouble them in any other way. And in the previous game, I think it was the Sheffield United game, that was a penalty that probably should never have been. So I feel like they've been a bit unlucky to concede in the last two. And it is horrible watching Liverpool. But here's a few things, right? When you talk about season keepers, guess what you've got to do with season keepers? You have to keep them for the long haul because there will be ups, there will be downs. People kind of forget what happened last year. They didn't play 38 games and evenly score their points for clean sheets and attack and returns the whole way along, right? So far this year, they got 1 clean sheet in 7 games. Robertson has 1 goal, 2 assists. That's 3 attack and returns. And Trent only has 1 assist, right? So it's 1 attack and return. Last season, in the first 13 game weeks, Trent had 4 attack and returns, 3 assists, 1 goal. All right, so he's only got 6 more games till he hits that. And then he'll be, he's got 6 more games basically to get 3 attack and returns. Could he do that? Potentially. I think he's looked better in the next few games. But you see what I mean? It's not always an even spread. Trent in the first 19 last year had 2 goals, 8 assists. So suddenly, add another 6 more games, and he's up to 10 attack and returns from 4. This is last year still. So suddenly he gets 6 in the next 6 games. So at that point, the attack and returns start to come. And it shows that it's not evenly spread throughout the season, right? Robertson, first 20 games last year, so more than half the season, 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 attack and returns. So far, he has 3 this year. Right, so in the next 13 games, could you see him getting 3 attack and returns? Probably, right? So there's still a chance he can match that. The problem is the clean sheets. Well, last year, bearing in mind they've only had 1 this year so far, they had 2 clean sheets in the first 15 game weeks last year, and then they got 7 in a row. Right, so they got 9 in the first 22 game weeks, which is quite high to be honest. We probably shouldn't have been expecting that much anyway. So I think they got about 9 in the first 22 games. So they'd have to get 8 in the next, 14 games. That's probably not likely, right? So they are going to be, I would say, worse value than last year. But they are, I think, still going to be consistent at times. Like you look at those fixtures, from an attacking point of view, I think they look quite tough over the next 4. But from a defensive point of view, Brighton, probably a good clean sheet. Wolves could be a good clean sheet. Fulham, good clean sheet prospects. Palace, West Brom, definitely. That's 5 in the next 8. And then the other fixtures are Man City, Leicester and Spurs. Now, I wouldn't like to call them right now, but that Man City game could be fairly tight. Maybe you got another clean sheet in there. What I'm trying to say is, they're not suddenly these awful options where they are your priority to transfer out. Maybe you want to fund a move like me. Fair enough, get rid of them. Maybe you've just had enough and you think West Ham, which is the team I've seen talked about a lot, and now the best defensive team in the league, best potential for attacking returns, get them in. But unless you're making the move to fund something else, I'm not sure you 100% need to get rid of them right now. If you just had enough and you don't like watching 7.4 million, 7.1 million, whatever prices they are, not get points every week, fair enough if you think that's going to continue. But I just wanted to kind of bring up last year, right? Not to say this is what they scored in the first 15, here's what they scored in the first 20. That's exactly what they're going to score this year. Because, of course, football doesn't work like that, and neither does FPL. But it just shows you how inconsistent returns can be sometimes. You might get a few, then a load of blanks, then a load of returns, or you might get it kind of more spread out. And this season yet, we don't know. Van Dijk is, of course, a massive, massive miss. But they've still got a lot of good players in that team. They're going to restrict chances. And so I do think they're still going to keep plenty of clean sheets. But the amount of attacking returns Trent got last year was 19. That's absolutely insane anyway. That's an attacking return every other game. So again, perhaps it's fair game that he's going to get a few less this year. But I think if you're taking them out, expecting them not to get clean sheets or not to get attacking returns, then in a few game weeks you might rue that if that's your reason for getting rid. So let's talk about West Ham, defence and attack. I kind of just touched on it there. A lot of people looking at defence. And I can see why, right? I've got no bad things to say about them. I like the fact that people are looking to get them in. I think they've got some good fixtures to come. Let's talk about the attack quickly, right? So Antonio, I still don't know how long he's going to be out for. Still not heard from David Moyes this week. I'd love to be able to just put this show out after the press conferences, but it's just not possible. So if he's back, I think that changes things. Suddenly he's a really good option. Maybe Bowen, etc. are good options too. If he's out, not only is he obviously not an option, but I also think it makes Villa attack in general not as good, right? Could they still pick up points against Fulham? Absolutely. But going for Haller, who we've not really seen the best of for a long time, Bowen without Antonio, etc., etc. Suddenly they're not as appealing to me, and I wouldn't be in a rush to get their attack in. Fulham looks good, right? But actually, you look at their fixtures, they're maybe not as good as people like me have been bigging up this whole time. Now, obviously for Antonio, he's a bit of a monster when it comes to expected goals, and you expect points from him anyway, and he's done quite well given the fixtures he's got. But I think once you take him out, the fixtures aren't quite as good for the rest of the West Ham boys because they're just missing their focal point in attack. So Fulham looks good, and to be fair, Villa at home looks good. But outside of that, it's Sheffield United away. They never really get battered by any teams. Man United and Leeds as well. They're going to be tough enough games. So West Ham have done well, but I do worry about their attack going forward. In terms of defence, I still think you could go for them. I do think when you miss your number one attacker, it does affect the whole team. Right, we're going to talk about Danny Ings in a minute. I think him being out will probably affect the Southampton defence. Because once you haven't got your good attackers, you're maybe not keeping the ball as often going forward. Maybe you're not providing as many attacks, which means you've got to defend a little bit more. And I'm not sure how much there is in that, but it always sounds good to me at least, or sounds like a potentially good theory. But I still think the fixtures are probably okay. Like Sheffield United away, okay, for an attack, it's probably not great. But for a defence, they're not a very good attacking team, Sheffield United. So that's probably a good chance for a clean sheet. So I can fully see why you're looking at defenders. For me, it's Cresswell, Masuaku, Soufal, or Balbuena. The problem I have... Which one's the best one depends how often you want to play them. Like, I wouldn't be too concerned about paying 5.1 million for Cresswell if I had to play him more often than not. My preference would be to put these players into some kind of rotation. I don't think you want to be in a position where you have to play a West Ham defender every single week. So personally, I'd rather spend less. Masuaku, Soufal, or Balbuena. I've looked at the underlying numbers. Soufal's played more than more than half the minutes of Masuaku. Masuaku's underlying numbers, chances created, are a little bit better. So Masuaku probably looks like the one to go for. From an assist point of view, and Balbuena from a goal-scoring threat. And he's also 4.4 million, so he's a bit cheaper as well. Only by 0.1, I get that, but as Tesco say, every little helps. So 3 shots in the box for Balbuena, and Masuaki's had 2 shots in the box, Soufal only 1. Like I said, he's played more than half the minutes so far. So for me, if I was buying one right now, it'd be between Balbuena and Masuaku. I'd probably go for Masuaku, just for that assist potential versus the goal. Although obviously goals are worth double, and I just think 5.1 million for Cresswell would be too much for me at a point in time where people are trying to maybe take money out of their defence, and I wouldn't want to be playing them every single week anyway. But what I would say, to kind of counter my own point, for the next 3 game weeks, you could just play your West Ham defender. So maybe go for Cresswell. He's creating quite a few chances on a lot of set pieces as well. I think Masuaku would be the one for me. So we'll talk about Saiss Replacements really quickly. Do I think he's lost his place? Probably, right? They played Aït-Nouri on the left wing back position. I'm assuming once Marçal is back, he could play there as well. They're probably not going to keep playing Saiss there unless they really feel they need that defensive solidity. But I just think ultimately for probably a defence and an attack point of view, it's better just to have a proper left wing back there. And because Kilman's done well and because it was Saiss that missed out, yes, you would assume that Kilman has now kept his place. Does that mean it's going to be the same for the whole season? Not necessarily, but we have to go on the info we've got, and that looks pretty good right now. In terms of replacements, right, I don't want to sit on the fence, but this is such a broad question. Depends how much money you've got in your bank, whether or not Saiss was someone that had to play week in, week out, and the player you're bringing in has to play week in, week out as well. So for me, you could go for a Villa defender we just talked about. If you want someone you'd be happy to play most games, games, I think Chelsea defender is where I would try and look. So Zuma if you've got enough, or if you can really stretch, then go to Chilwell. I think they're the two best options. Reece James, look, people who've got Reece James are probably in a good position because people like me don't want to buy him, and when he plays, he looks really good. But you're always going to have that rotation threat with Azpilicueta with him. If there was ever an injury to Azpilicueta, then suddenly Reece James looks like a really good option. But I think Chilwell or Zuma if you need to save a bit of money. And then the cheap defenders are probably the same we've been talking about for a while. West Ham, who, again, I've just spoken about. Lamptey, if he's fit, we'll have to wait and see what Potter says for Brighton. Leeds defenders, who I still think look okay. Villa defenders, who I still think look okay as well. So you could go a bit cheaper as well. There's plenty of options you could swap Saiss to. What a lot of people will be doing is going straight to Kilman. Now, if you don't already own him, right, obviously at 4 million, he looked like a bargain, 4.1 a bargain. He still is a 4.3 million in the Wolves defence, but as his price creeps up, he's suddenly not so, I don't know, for me, it's like I don't really want to rush out and necessarily buy him. And when I look at the fixtures for Wolves coming up, you've got Leicester, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea in the next 6. And Wolves are one of the best defensive teams, so I wouldn't be hugely worried about having to play him. And for that money, you probably shouldn't expect as many returns as Saiss anyway. But the fixtures are not fantastic. So if you're not already on Kilman, I don't think you necessarily have to rush to go there. But if you want to save some money on Saiss, it's not a player you have to play every week. He might be the best option. But there are so many good options. For me, it's Chelsea if you want to play them kind of week in, week out most weeks. Otherwise, it just depends on your structure, rotation and stuff like that. I've just listed a bunch of defenders, but pick whichever one suits your team the best. So I want to talk a little bit about fixture swings because, I mean, I've talked about it quite a bit on streams, like my transfer plans. On the team selection video yesterday, I talked about my transfer plans as well, and it kind of all revolves around this. But I wanted to kind of put it up so you could see the fixtures side by side about why I'm thinking about this. So it's Spurs fixtures on the left, and it's Man City's fixtures on the right. So everybody knows how good Spurs fixture is this week, right? West Brom away, massively going to be captain Son and Kane. But after that, it gets tricky, right? And I don't care who you are, whether you're a former fixtures person, nobody is captaining Spurs players for the next, from game week 9 all the way down to game week 16. In game week 16, they play Fulham at home, and then maybe you'll want to captain Kane or Son. Then the lay of the land could be completely different. So I'm not massively worried at that point about who I'm captaining right now. I just know that's when I'll next consider them. In between that, you've got Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Crystal Palace away, Liverpool away, Leicester at home, Wolves away. So the best fixture is Crystal Palace away in game week 12, and that week Liverpool play Fulham. So I don't think anyone's going to be too concerned having to captain Salah or Mane. So for me, that suddenly makes Spurs players dispensable. Now, there's counter arguments to that, right? They're playing well, they're in form, but how much of that form is because they've got good fixtures? I think a lot of people forget this, right? This is what happens all the time. Player has good fixtures. We don't jump on them. I didn't jump on Spurs players straight away. They did really well. They continue to have good fixtures. We jump on. They continue to do really well. And then when it comes to bad fixtures, a lot of people, it's not, well, now they've got bad fixtures, the points are going to dry up a bit. It doesn't mean they're not going to score any goals and not get any assists. But you'd imagine the volume is going to go down. But people don't seem to think that. They just think, well, they're in form, I have to keep them. But fixtures play such a big part. They always will. And look, if you don't want to get rid of Spurs players, then don't. And there are other reasons, right? Price, for example, they've gone up a lot. If you had them from the start, you're going to lose some money if you want to buy them back. But by the time you want to buy them back, like if they do continue to decrease in price and decreasing the amount of points and people do move over to maybe Jamie Vardy or Liverpool players or City players, whoever it might be, then their price may come down a bit. The reason I'm looking to sell them is because it kind of coincides, apart from game week 9 where they play each other, it coincides with a really good fixture run for Man City where they play Burnley, Fulham, West Brom, Southampton, Newcastle, all the way down to like game week 19, Brighton, Crystal Palace. So even if you wanted that game week 16 fixture, Fulham at home, you could maybe come back to them then and spend more transfers. Now, the only thing I would say is if Jesus is now back and Aguero is coming back soon, you might not want to go for a striker. So you're having to use 2 free transfers to shift that Kane money into midfield, to then maybe use 2 free transfers to shift it back in game week 16. But for me, that fixture run is so good for Man City. I don't care how bad they've been so far, and they have been bad by their own high standards. Burnley, Fulham, West Brom in the space of 4 games at home, that looks good to me. Now, the one caveat, without going through this too much right now, is a lot of those good fixtures for Man City from kind of game week 10 all the way up to 19. It's all over Christmas, right? So we know the fixture schedule gets a bit more hectic. I actually looked at De Bruyne and Sterling last year, right? Similar hectic schedule. De Bruyne played every single game over Christmas, and Sterling only got benched for one, and he still came on. I can't remember if he scored or not. I didn't check that. But they did get really good minutes. And you've got to think, right, while Liverpool without Van Dijk, let's say Man City get a result this weekend, or just don't lose, right? They just don't lose to Liverpool. That is a great fixture run to build some momentum and get yourself up the league and really put pressure on Liverpool, which just didn't happen last season. So I don't see a huge amount of benches for the likes of De Bruyne or Sterling, which is why I'm targeting these fixtures. And I'm hoping, again, a bit like for Spurs, the fixtures will bring Man City into form. And getting Jesus back is huge. Getting Aguero back will be big as well. And something I want to touch on, which I don't have on the screen, but you can, if you follow me on Twitter, I've tweeted it out. But the captaincy rotation, right, if you have a Liverpool and a Man City player from game week 10 all the way down to game week 20, it's pretty incredible. You play Fulham twice, I think it is, and you play West Brom 3 times because the fixtures were reversed during this time. So Man City versus Fulham, game week 11, Liverpool versus Fulham, game week 12, Man City versus West Brom, game week 13, Liverpool versus West Brom, game week 15, and then City play West Brom in game week 20. And in between, you've got Palace at home, Brighton at home, Southampton away, Newcastle away, and this isn't even taking into account that Vardy has Fulham at home, in game week 10, the week that Kane has Chelsea away. You'd put your money on Vardy. Even if you, like I said, you got in your Liverpool, your City players, in game week 16, maybe you switch back to Son, maybe you switch back to Kane, maybe they're injured at that point, maybe your City boys get injured. You just don't know. It's a long time to plan ahead. But these kind of fixture swings you should take notice of, even if you don't want to get rid of Kane and Son, or you just want to get rid of one, or even if you want to keep them, you should be thinking about how you maybe will get Man City players in. Will you go to Foden, to Mahrez? Will you get a defender in, for example? I've not even touched on that, and I probably won't because I talked about this for so long already. But a Cancelo, a Walker, a Diaz could be a great option. Over this fixture run, you'd imagine a lot of clean sheets. So be aware of this, right? Spurs look great for this week, but after this, it's going to get a lot tough for them. And let me know in the comments below, right? I'm really genuinely interested. Kane or Son, are you looking to get rid, and who is getting rid of both? So just going to quickly touch on this one, right? Danny Ings is out for 4 to 6 weeks. Even with the international break, he's probably going to miss maybe 2, 3, 4 game weeks for Southampton, right? So it's a huge thing. One thing to take into account is how much will this affect Che Adams. For me, I mean, you can see it 2 ways, right? Some people will say, well, Ings is out. This is Che Adams' chance to be the man, show he can be the man without Danny Ings. My thinking is Danny Ings is hugely kind of a massive part of that Southampton team, not just for scoring goals, but also in the build-up. We see him dropping deep at times as well to get the ball. And he also got 2 assists last time out, right? Not last time out, but the week before, I think it was, against Everton. So I think they're massively going to miss him, and they got some defensive problems as well. So that is a worry. I'm only going to touch on this quickly about who to transfer him out for. All I know, without saying who to go for, who the number 1 pick is, if I had him, I'd almost certainly be looking at downgrading. The only way I would upgrade, like, if I had Son, I probably wouldn't bring Kane in this week. So I would just captain Son, know that it's just one more week I've got to put up with it. And then after that, the fixtures swing. So I don't think I'd go to Kane. I probably wouldn't go to Vardy until game week 10. You could go to Werner if you think Chelsea have turned the corner and he's going to start scoring points. But for me, it would probably be a downgrade to a Wilson, to a Bamford, to a Watkins, who we now think is on penalties after taking that one and dispatching it nicely. Probably not the right time to jump on more pay, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And obviously, if Antonio's fit, he looks good. Or if you don't own Calvert-Lewin already, he looks good, but maybe not for Man United. So there's plenty of options to go for. If I was buying a cheap striker this week, it probably wouldn't be Bamford, even though I don't think he's a bad option. But we've just seen the last 4 game weeks, he's blanked 3 times in 3 tough fixtures. They've got tough fixtures coming up. I would wait for him until game week 12. And I would probably get Wilson with Southampton's injuries and the fixture run that Wilson has coming up until about game week 14. I do think he's the best option. Pretty much plays 90 minutes and on penalties as well. So plenty of options you can go with Danny Ings. I would probably be downgrading if it was me. So fun fact, right? Something I've learned today, which I wanted to share with you. There's some big wisdom. You are, right, in FPL, ready for this? You are allowed, right? I can't believe I'm going to say this. You're allowed to change your mind. You don't have to have one opinion at the start of the season and then have that same opinion the whole way through the season and never ever change it and be stubborn the whole time, right? It's a revelation, I know. This is why you watch this channel. So I've talked a lot about how Arsenal defence has been poor. Last season, right, expected goals conceded were poor. Arteta came in, didn't change very much, right? They continued to concede goals. And at the start of this season, what else do you have to go on? They hadn't signed Partey at that time, right? You had to go on last season. They didn't look great. And I didn't think they had many defensive options. And to be honest, I've not really been burnt by that. They've kept, in 7 games? Like 2 clean sheets. And one of them was against Fulham, which you'd expect anyway. And after that, they got hardly any. And they just kept one against Man United. So it's not like we've been punished not going for them. But as a lot of people have been telling me, they have got the best defensive record in terms of goals scored. Now, I don't particularly care about how many goals they've conceded. Goals conceded, not goals scored. But I don't particularly care about that because last year, for example, Chelsea conceded a lot of goals. That did not put me off getting their defence this year because their expected goals conceded, right? So underlying numbers is something I look at quite a lot. But this year, I've looked at it for Arsenal. It's 7.54 now after 7 games. So it's just over 1 a game. And that's the 5th best in the league, right? So they are looking good. Dare I say it, they're boring, right? Which is maybe perfect for FPL. They're not conceding many goals. They ain't scoring many either. And in attack, I think that's a whole different conversation, which I might come on to in a sec. And I do think, right, and it's something I said before, maybe Partey will help improve them. It looks like he will. It looks like an absolute baller. It's not just he's not just a central defensive midfielder that's going to run around winning the ball back like Kante. He's going to give them control, I would say, in that midfield, which is probably something they've missed for quite a while. And he looks good. And I think the United game showed they can defend. They defended extremely well in that Man United game, right? Didn't give us many chances at all, especially in the first half. And I think the fixtures coming up probably show there are some clean sheets to come. Villa at home, quite good, although I'm a Jack Grealish owner. I wouldn't be surprised if I got points from him this week. Wolves at home, Burnley at home, Southampton at home, all to come in the next 6. So defensive-wise, they look good. Bellerin's only created 4 chances, though, which isn't huge, and he seems to be the defender most people are looking at. You've got Tierney, but he's quite expensive. For me, they've only conceded 7, but if you concede 7 and 7 and you concede almost 1 a game, right? Which I'm not saying that obviously they haven't done that because they got a few clean sheets, but we saw this maybe 4 or 5 seasons back, right? Spurs had the best defensive record in terms of goals conceded, but from an FPL point of view, they kept conceding like 1 every game, whereas other teams were maybe conceding 2 or 3. But from a clean sheet perspective, it doesn't make a difference. So that's still frustrating. I just don't think Arsenal defence, the fixtures are good, but I'm not rushing out to buy them. Bellerin's quite a good price, but I'm not sure how much his attacking threat is actually as good as people think. His expected assists, interesting enough, are higher than Robertson, but I think the sample size is quite small, and ultimately he has only created 4 chances so far. So defence could be worth a shot. I think Gabriel looked really good against Man United as well. So if he can keep that up and not get himself sent off, which he probably should have been against Man United, just saying, then yeah, they're probably looking good. Going forward, right, let's continue talking about Arsenal. I think they look really bad. Their expected goals is only slightly higher than Fulham, Palace and Sheffield United. Aubameyang, I think if he hadn't scored in that Man United game, that would have been 5 or 6 games without scoring. And I mean, it wasn't a dodgy penalty. It was a definite penalty, but you know, if someone else had been back there tackling, probably wouldn't have been given, and Aubameyang just didn't look threatening at all. As a Man United fan, that game was hugely frustrating because we just couldn't get hold of the ball. Arsenal forced us into making ambitious passes that just didn't come off. But from a goal threat perspective, I never felt that worried about Arsenal scoring. And in fact, they only had 3 shots in the box in that game, right? So we kept them out quite well. Obviously, that's a tough game against Man United anyway in general. But yeah, the defence looks good. They seem to be turning the corner. 7 games is not a massive sample size, but in FPL we have to sometimes go on what we know. And I think he's looking quite good. Do I want to bring a defender in though? I can see some merit in doing it for maybe the next 6 fixtures, but I still think there's plenty of other good options and a lot of them are cheaper as well. Okay, so let's quickly talk about Brighton, right? More importantly, talking about more pay and Matt Ryan. So I've got to record this before the press conference for Potter, which is a bit annoying because he could give us some really big news. Hopefully Lamptey is fit. If he's not, then you just use your bench players. I think he doesn't need to be a transfer out. If Potter goes and says he's out for like 4 or 5 games, then okay, maybe you go to maybe a West Ham defender or something like that. But if he's not, you just keep him, I think, and bench him if he's just out for one game. But fingers crossed he'll be fine. Morpay and Ryan, right? I'm going to start with Morpay because I own him. A lot of people think I should 100% get rid of him. And the reports coming out are that he had a bust-up with someone in training or whatever during a match or something behind the scenes, and Potter was kind of punishing him for that. Whether it was with Connolly, who also missed out, I don't know. It hasn't really come out, and I'm hoping he gives some info. My hope is that he'll say it's an internal thing, it's dealt with, we move on. Something like that, right? Because ultimately, Brighton are not a club with the luxury of benching or putting out the squad completely their best striker for the whole season. So anything they can do to kind of maybe punish him, teach him a lesson, but then get him back in, you'd think that would happen. Burnley at home is a good fixture they could expect to get some points from. Spurs maybe wasn't it. And to be fair, maybe the Spurs game actually gave him the chance to do it. Had it been Fulham at home or Burnley at home or West Brom at home, would he still have done it in a fixture where they could have expected 3 points potentially? Maybe not, but until we know more, it's going to be hard to kind of, talk about the situation. So for me, if there's any positive news from Potter about him playing, I'm going to keep him because, okay, that's not a good thing, but also, what was the bust up about? Was he expecting more from the team or whatever? Was he expecting better performances? That's kind of what you want to see, even though maybe tensions behind the scenes aren't great. But I do think, because he's just so good for them, he's going to have to keep playing. What are the other options? Connolly, who was also out of the squad. Welbeck, who's probably not up to match fitness yet and just not as good as Morpay anyway. So I'm hoping he plays. Obviously, if you want to get rid, like I've talked about cheap forwards so much, go and take your pick. If I have to get rid of him this week, I will probably go for Wilson, right? I've already kind of said that for other questions. Just talking about Morpay in general, right? I've talked a lot about cheap forwards and how you probably don't need to sell them. Like, any time I put my team up, everyone just fixates on Morpay and he has to be sold. But they've got okay fixtures coming up and he probably will tick over. Like, my transfer strategy is more about how do I get Sterling? How do I get De Bruyne in? How do I get these players I want to captain that are hopefully going to get me big points? I don't care if Morpay gets maybe 15 to 20 points over 4 or 5 fixtures and Wilson maybe gets 22 or 23 or whatever it might be. Now, Wilson might heavily outscore him, but the chances are it's going to be quite low and not where my priority transfer is. So I'm not looking to get rid of Morpay unless I absolutely have to. And for now, we haven't heard anything, but I just can't imagine Brighton benching him or putting him out of the squad for too long. Matt Ryan's a little bit of a different story because he was on the bench and then Potter gave some weird thing about he's played 2 to 3 years of football, and so we're kind of giving him a rest. That's absolutely rubbish. Nobody needs a rest because they've played 2 to 3 years of football, especially not a goalkeeper. Now, a lot of you are probably on one goalkeeper strategies, right? So you don't have a bench player. And even if you do, it's probably Steele from Brighton, and he didn't even play. So hugely frustrating. Again, let's see what Potter says. My inkling is for Morpay to keep and for Ryan, if I had him, to sell, especially if you're on a one goalkeeper strategy, because one, Brighton not keeping a huge amount of clean sheets anyway, and he's probably been a little bit of the reason for that, not the whole reason, which may have been why he was benched in the first place, because let's be honest, it was not for a rest, right? It was performances, I'm almost certain about that. So he may not even keep his place, and I don't like doing goalkeeper transfers, but this is a unique situation where I probably would. Look, if Potter says he's had his rest, he's going to be back, fair enough, you keep him. But if you don't get any legitimate kind of info from him, I'd probably get rid if it was me. So that's it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I haven't gone back and checked, but I think that might have been quite a long one. So hopefully it provided decent info for you. It was a good watch and kind of provided some insight into helping you make your decisions. If you did enjoy it, please do give it a like and hit subscribe if you haven't already. I just wanted to quickly talk about patreon.com/letstalkfpl if you want to sign up to be a patron. This is probably one of the best times of the month to do it because you don't get charged until the first of the month. So you can sign up, see what it's all about, see if you enjoy it. If you don't, you can cancel before the end of the month and not get charged. There's Slack access if you want to join the Let's Talk FPL community. All my videos are converted to podcasts if that's something you prefer. There's extra Q&As over there as well. There's WhatsApp access depending on the tier you sign up. And just generally, if you want to support me, do check it out. There's a link in the description below. I do want to do a quick shout out to everybody as well that's on the Patreon Legends wall that's already signed up. Thanks very much for signing up. And obviously, I'll do a shout out for anyone that signs up new by the next video or stream. So thanks very much to everyone that's already signed up. If you want to support me through Movember as well, there's a link to that in the description below. I'll be back tomorrow for the captaincy video. I'll have a live stream tomorrow as well. I'll have the deadline stream on Friday. So much content to come on this channel. Why are you not already subscribed? Hit that button, hit that like button, and I'll catch you again tomorrow.